Good morning, everybody. Well, today has been a very interesting, a mixed box of emotions and thoughts. And even though the morning is still early, I've noticed that my own conscious mind has been seeking answers. We all go through transitions and times of change. Some of these are ones that we have contemplated and well thought, others are spontaneous, and others are ones that happen out of control. However, we do have a fear that tends to arise out of this. Sometimes it's a fear of anticipation, which is a happy fear, or anxiety, but it's not deep enough to create a block. And then we have a fear of failure. And then we may have that fear of the unknown, so we don't try. And I looked at a time in my own life that I had gone through a substantial time of change. And I was challenged to have these changes. And this could have been way back early, but I'm talking about something quite recent in my life. And the change that came was something that I really didn't see happening. I guess the human side of me was more conscious of my daily surroundings and my normal ambitions, my hopes, my dreams, my aspirations, my life. And then everything changed. And it changed on the 27th of May this year, 2017. And I actually, for the first time in a very long time, I embraced fear. Fear of what was going to happen. Where was my life? Where had I looked at things in a much different way? What had I missed? What keys, what signs, what information? And then the fear of change, the challenge to say goodbye to a life I thought I was creating, to a place I thought I was living, to a time I was giving a lot of devotion and connecting with what I felt was my path, my destiny. So the 27th of May 2017 opened up a fear. And with that fear, I had to look at what I could do. Could I be inhibited by this fear, or could I somehow learn to trust myself and understand that I've got through bigger and worse before? However, this time, maybe I'm not feeling I'm as prepared. Maybe I was shell-shocked by the circumstance or situation. And because I had no preempting, maybe before I was more in control. So when I look at this, I see fear of change becoming quite prevalent for some. And I found that in myself. So I had to trust that the transition and the steps that I would take were going to be okay. My life changed completely, and I keep talking about this because it did. It was likened to one day just waking up and finding out that your whole world was different to what you were actually perceiving or living, because circumstances and events were impossible to be able to fix. And this is exactly what had happened. So in this, I spoke with Spirit this morning and I asked, well, you know, I had fear. I had fear of where I was going to live, how I was going to survive, what I needed to do. I had fear of repeating the same situation or this same deluded connection within myself where I had somehow brushed over and not wanted to see a circumstance for what it was. So I was afraid that I would go along that same pathway. And I needed really for Spirit to give me something that would help me to better understand why I chose that pathway or why that fear was so prevalent. And this is where it became a reality check for myself. So I was left looking at where I was going to live, and beautifully, ironically, the universe and Spirit stepped in and that was taken care of. And then I was worried about how I was going to be able to survive, because I was in a circumstance where it was a partnership and we both relied on each other. And then all of a sudden that income or that support was no longer there. So it meant me doing it once again on my own. But that was a very nervous step, because this meant that I had to trust I would have the work, I would have that what I needed, and that the provisions would be there. And there was the fear of not knowing whether I would have that. And then there was the emotional areas that I needed to go through, and I needed to look back over the significance of what the lesson was. Was this just for myself? Was it for my partner at the time? Was this situation something that was there to help me to make the change I needed to make? Well, I gather it was, because obviously I've made the change. So when I spoke with Spirit this morning, I asked about, how do I trust my direction if I felt that I had been jilted or hurt or blindsided by a circumstance? Sometimes stepping outside my comfort zone again can be a very nervous situation for one to have to anticipate. And you can liken this to changing a job that you've been familiar with, always having a particular source of income, always being in a situation in which you know that you both are quite familiar, or always putting up with the complexities of other people and situations in your life, because it's a familiarity. The fear of making change can be an impossibility because you worry about your foundations, your security, how this will affect other people, how this circumstance will, benefit you. What if it doesn't? What if you end up worse off? I was exactly there. I've been there previously in my earlier years, but just recently, just before turning 50, I had the exact situation happen. And I literally can tell you that the fear that I had was not a crippling fear. It was more of a fear, can I trust that I can do this and that I can get through this? And of course you need proper support rods. This is not about just blind faith. It is about having the right people who are there as encouragers to help you through, to be able to know that you're making the right choices. It is about trusting that you have got this figured out. You may not feel that you have, but you have. And it is about understanding that sometimes that first step is the most difficult. But once you've done it, how liberated you may feel, because you no longer fear making that step. Fearing the unknown is the biggest thing that holds us back, because we don't have the answers. We always feel we need to have everything in order. Well, when something comes and bombards you or shakes you out of your tree or challenges you to change, you're not always prepared for that, but you do get through. And that journey may be slow and hard, and that journey may be fast and swift and beautiful. However, what you've learnt from that is that the only fear that you have had is the fear of the fear itself. It was the challenge. So where am I today? That was a healthy fear. It helped me to be able to say, oh my goodness, I've encountered worse. I've been through this. I've had that. But I've always been able to dust myself off and been able to make that change. And this is where I had to once again go back inside myself and look at where I was fearing probably fearing being successful at making that change. That's correct. Sometimes we can worry that when we make that change or make that step or make that decision, that it's going to change everything around us and that everything that we have known will never be the same again. Well, the strong foundations and the beautiful qualities and the positives will all stay there, but the things that are no longer of service or of use will dwindle away, and they will be replaced with other beautiful foundations. So don't fear change, because change brings a whole new perspective, a wonderful opportunity in which you can self-empower yourself and overcome small inhibitions. If you have feared a new relationship in your life, that opportunity will come where you are able to learn to trust that it is all right, that you're working through that feelings of vulnerability. If you've feared not having enough money, not being well, not having what you need, or not being able to provide for those that you love, these are steps and changes that you can challenge yourself to say, okay, I do have that concern. I'm conscious about that need, and I do worry that I may not be able to successfully achieve everything that I've set out to do. However, one step is all it takes. One conscious step. And once you've done that, you're already one step closer to achieving the change you have wanted. And fear can be a very healthy step in some circumstances. And in other circumstances, it can be that which is the challenge to work through. And once you have, you may find that the light at the end of that tunnel has been a well worth transition for yourself, because you will no longer hold that fear again. You'll identify with that trigger or that situation as something I can accomplish and I can do wholeheartedly. So I'm hoping today that maybe my soul searching and my experience and something that was quite personal for me to transition through may be able to help you also to transition through a time that feels a bit challenging or a little bit apprehensive, or maybe you're holding on to the fear of the unknown. I wish you all the very best for your day, but most of all, I'm sending you some cosmic hugs. Thank you.